Let me bring in my think tank tonight for their reaction. Joining us in Lansing, Michigan, Takura Niamfakudza joins us, great criminal defense attorney. Here in studio, they're known as the Law Ladies. They've named themselves. I didn't make that name up for them. They all work together. We've got Ashley McMahon, Jasmine Barber, Holly Waltman, all great criminal defense attorneys. Thank you all for being here. Let me start with the empty courtroom. You've got a criminal defendant, second-degree murder charges. No one there. Does the jury notice?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, of course. And I think the thing that we just saw was Stephen Washington's lack of reaction when the verdict itself was read. I mean, it almost seemed like throughout this trial, you had a defendant who didn't even really seem to believe in himself. I mean, even when we watched, Scott Nelson, who said, look, I'm guilty, I want the death penalty, and was a little bit crazy in the courtroom. You were like, at least we're getting some sort of reaction. Washington just stone cold, nothing.
As a defense attorney, I'm calling everybody I know. I don't care if they are related. I don't care if they are my friends, his friends. I want somebody sitting behind the defense table showing that they believe in the case that I'm presenting for the jury.
It was empty.
I would have had my mom there. I would have had my neighbor there. I would have had these ladies there to support me or to at least show something. I mean, I don't know, hire an actor or something that's not working to come and sit behind you so that something is there. The optics of it were extremely harsh, and I think that was said in their relatively short deliberations today.
Yeah, Takura, your thoughts about the fact that this courtroom was empty, especially on the side of this defendant?
Very unfortunate, and actually to the point that was just made moments ago, I've had my mother come and listen in when we were having verdicts read. It's true, and actually within, I'm not going to look around, but within a block we have multiple colleges. Now I know many students are on break right now, but I know that for a few dollars,
I understand what you're saying,
football, but there are people we could have filled the courtroom with, right? We could have paid people to come in and sit like a wedding, right? Everybody knows which side, all right? The people behind the government, they're supporting the victim and their family, and the people on this side obviously supporting the defendant. So it's sad. I know it was a lonely moment for him. It's very unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Well, on the other side, Miguel was able to make it. He couldn't get there. He had issues. He's from Texas, family things going on there, but ended up making it for closing arguments and for the verdict. And from everything that Chanley told us, the jury noticed. They were looking towards him throughout. Makes a big difference.
I mean, this was a multiple day or trial, right? So they become familiar with who the judge is, who the prosecutors are. They see when people from the district attorney's office are shuffling papers and documents into the prosecutors. They notice that on the defense side. One time after a verdict, I had a juror ask me where I got my shoes on day 2 of the trial. They notice things.
It's unreal. The other thing about this case is that it was a case full of eyewitnesses who didn't really see anything. Like they saw little pieces of everything.
It's a perfect circumstantial evidence case. And so you don't always have to have someone who directly saw that and they're like, hey, I saw Stephen Washington pull the gun and pull the trigger. This is a perfect example, textbook example of a circumstantial evidence case that I believe the state did a really good job pulling together.
It really did. A lot of passion as well. When we come back, we're going to get some of that post-verdict reaction from the prosecution, from the defense. And yes, you will hear from one of the jurors when we come back.
Best Fiends. Collect JoJo and tons of other cute characters. Solve thousands of fun puzzles. Download Best Fiends for free today. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
If your joints feel stiff, sore, and achy, it will get worse if you do nothing.
But most products just temporarily hide the symptoms.
Now there's something different. Instaflex Advanced.
It targets the root cause of joint soreness and stiffness. It doesn't just cover up symptoms.
Instaflex Advanced bathes your joints in its cutting-edge combination of 5 key natural ingredients found in no other product for relief you can feel, backed by 5 clinical studies. For your complimentary 2-week sample of Instaflex Advanced, text ENJOY to 231231.
Don't wait while your stiff, achy joints get worse. Target the root cause with Instaflex Advanced today. It's so powerful you could feel the difference in just 1 week. Maybe that's why it's the #1 selling joint brand at GNC.
But you can only get your complimentary 2-week sample by texting ENJOY to 231231. That's ENJOY to 231231. Do it now.
Hi, I'm Barb, and you may have heard about SoClean. It's the fast and easy way to maintain your sleep equipment. Did you know manufacturers recommend that you wash your equipment every day using soap and water? That's a lot of work and a lot of hassle. But now there's an easy option. With SoClean, all you need to do is put your sleep equipment in, close the lid, and walk away. It saves you time, it saves you hassle. Just one touch, and SoClean does all the work for you. You can try SoClean risk-free for 30 nights. Even shipping is free. Plus, when you call right now, get $50 off. Call 1-800-865-7993 or go to SoClean.com to take advantage of this risk-free trial. Call 1-800-865-7993 now. So fast, so easy, so clean.
With the money I've made on Poshmark, I've been able to pay for all our family's vacations.
I could pay for my wedding just on what I've made from Poshmark.
I've made over $10,000 and I was able to buy my new car.
Download the free Poshmark app now.
Attention parents of children diagnosed with cerebral palsy, Erb's palsy, or another birth injury. If you suspect a medical mistake may have occurred at or near the time of birth, your child may have important legal rights. Call Science and Kirk for a free legal consultation. Cerebral palsy is a permanent disability that may be the result of brain damage suffered during pregnancy, delivery, or shortly after birth. A failure to follow the proper standard of care may be the cause of your child's injury. A lifetime of medical treatment can cost millions of dollars. Protect your family and find out whether financial compensation may be available. Cases are also being investigated for children diagnosed with Erb's palsy, also known as shoulder dystocia or brachial plexus injury. If you suspect your child's disability could have been prevented, obtain a free consultation and case evaluation.
Call 1-800-892-9109 for a free consultation.
I'm disappointed, shocked. I'm surprised that they came back with a conviction on second-degree murder. I feel that the prosecution dropped the ball and failed to meet their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. With that being said, it was a very engaging jury. They were always tuned in. I saw them taking notes frequently, and I do respect their decision.
Were you surprised that it came without any questions, or there was nothing from the jurors?
Yes, I'm surprised that it came without any questions, and I'm also surprised that it came back as fast as it did.
Member of the defense team, Gittes James, her reaction to the verdict tonight. My think tank back with me. Takura, they were surprised that it only took 4 hours to come back. How about you? Were you shocked?
I was not surprised at the ultimate verdict or really the amount of time that they took, because my business partner, Mary Shardy, and I, we once had a jury come back in 19 minutes. And the only reason it took them that long was because they had to go use the restroom. But to Gidget's point, I don't think that they met the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. I wasn't surprised by the verdict, though.
All right, you're talking about reaching that beyond a reasonable doubt verdict. Well, one of the jurors, juror number 8, spoke with our producer, Grace Wong, after court today. Didn't want to go on camera. Take a listen.
We talked through everything that we could think of that would have been a possible doubt to a guilty verdict, and none of them really were, at the end of the day, reasonable enough to keep us from voting guilty.
So did you consider at all the whole self-defense idea that he had a knife?
I don't really want to get into the details. I'll just say that we took a really big look at every sort of conceivable other theory and other outcome, even things that were pretty far-fetched, and we sort of talked our way through everything. And at the end of the day, we kind of settled on each thing being like, no, that's not sufficient to change where we're going with this.
So was there any one piece of evidence that was the most persuasive?
No, it was, we definitely took everything. There was a lot of back and forth and between witnesses and between reports, and it was looking at everything and piecing things together.
So how did you piece it together? And I sat through all of it, and I was like, well, they can't identify him.
I would say without...
There's no DNA.
I would say at this point, that's all I'm comfortable saying. I'm willing to go that far and just sort of... We did look at things, we spent a lot of time, but that's the statement that I'm comfortable with at this time until I've had more of a chance to sit and think about it.
All right.
But
Thank you so much.
Yes, I've got friends who work in media, so I was like, yeah, she's going to be sitting out there wanting to talk to someone.
Yes, exactly. So do you want to share your name?
I prefer not to.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Were you the jury foreman?
No.
Okay.
Nope, just a talkative guy.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we appreciate juror number 8 giving us some insight. So what I liked about juror number 8, I don't know if the criminal defense attorneys are going to like it, but really held the reasonable doubt standard to something reasonable. Like there's always other alternative theories out there or potential things that could have happened, but are they reasonable? And it seems like that's what juror number 8 and the rest of this jury was focused in on.
I agree. I think that juror number 8, hit the nail on the head. I think he did exactly what we want jurors to do. And I'm sorry, but the defense did not put forward a self-defense defense. And at the end of the day, even though the burden is not on the defendant to prove their case, there is a burden on them to provide some doubt that is reasonable to the jurors so that they don't convict your client. And I think they just did a terrible job of that. At one point watching this, and I'm a defense attorney, I'm trying to help them out. I'm looking for what they're trying to get out on cross-examination. They had this discombobulated theory where they were trying to say basically it was a setup against Washington by a variety of witnesses against him.
It's a frame job.
Yes.
Old-fashioned frame job.
And I'm sorry, it just didn't translate in the cross-examinations. And I thought, when a theory isn't working, drop it, pick a different lane and move into that one. And they just didn't do it. They hammered onto one of them, and it just didn't work in the end. I'm not surprised.
Takura, you mentioned that there was reasonable doubt here. What was the reasonable alternative explanation as to what happened here, other than Stephen Washington shooting Isai?
So, to a point that was made earlier, I think even in the discussion with juror number 8, the only person who could identify him, put the gun in Stephen Washington's hand, was the one guy who set all of this into motion, who was drunk and high. So again, there was no physical evidence tying him to it, no DNA, and even there was no murder weapon found. So I think, again, I wasn't surprised by the verdict, but I don't think it rose to the level that it did. I think something that the defense struggled with, if they had stuck with one theory, instead of, I think I heard in the rebuttal, Bill Crino wasn't surprised by it, but he even attacked some of the arguments that were made and said, look, if this was a frame job, it was a terrible one. So if they had stuck perhaps with one theory, then it wouldn't have seemed like, they were really clutching at straws. Easy to Monday night quarterback football, but I think that's something that would have served them well. And also by attacking Mr. Melton, right? Somebody who I think the jury really empathized with by asking him when none of the physical evidence seemed to match with what it is that was suggesting. By asking everybody, I think at one point after the verdict came back, Bill Crino said, boy, we would have needed a bus to get all the people who the defense pointed the finger at. Stick with one person, stick with one defense, and perhaps they would have gained more ground if the physical evidence matched what they were getting at with their cross-examination questions.
All right, now let me ask you, as criminal defense attorneys, prosecutors like to have a case, but you guys have an incredible advantage because you can talk to the defendant and find out what really happened, right?
Well, assuming that the client is taking the position that he was there, but it seemed that Mr. Washington's position was that he wasn't there.
All right, take me behind the curtain. Do clients, and when I say clients, I mean criminal defendants, do they tell you the truth?
Not always.
Yeah.
So is it possible that the defense in this case was told by Stephen Washington, I wasn't there, and maybe he was actually there, and that would handcuff what you can do as criminal defense attorneys?
Absolutely. It definitely ties our hands. And look, that's why I kind of thought that during this case. I was like, look, they're doing an alibi defense on this. There may only be circumstantial evidence, but there's a lot of it, and there's a lot of people
So what do you
involved
do? Your client says, and again, when I say client, I mean criminal defendant, accused of murder, says, I wasn't there. I could have done it. I wasn't there, right? And then you take a look at the discovery, the evidence in the case. And from the statements made by witness after witness after witness, it all points to your guy being there. Do you confront him or her with that?
I would not get confrontational with a client over whether or not.
Look at this.
What I prefer to do, my strategy typically is, one thing that I'm able to enjoy as an attorney speaking for someone else is the ability to pick a story that fits the facts the best. It's sometimes it's not a matter of.
But what if? I understand that, but you're saying that the discovery, the evidence is telling me this, but if your client is telling you something opposite, how do you reconcile that? When the evidence says this, which I would argue in this case, the evidence, if I was the defense attorney, oh my goodness. If I was the defense attorney, I would say, this looks like self-defense based upon the star witness for the prosecution. So it looks like you're there and you're confronted by a man with a knife. You confront him, and then 30 seconds later, you fire the gun. That's what the evidence tells me, and that sounds like self-defense. But you're telling me you weren't there.
It's problematic, Vinnie. You cannot bring a gun to a knife fight. And a self-defense defense is an affirmative defense. You are admitting to being there, and you're admitting to doing the act, and you're offering a reason for why you did it.
Right. What better reason than someone coming at you with a knife?
Well, here's my problem with both the framing. The knife is not. You can't bring a gun to a knife fight. You can bring a knife to a knife fight.
Here's the way the testimony came out, and this is why I'm saying it. Okay, the testimony was from Ivan Keener, the prosecution star witness, right? That he sees Washington holding something that he believes is a gun, and he believes the other guy has a knife. So now it's a standoff. He doesn't fire the gun immediately like Amber Geiger did. 30 seconds between the time that he's holding the gun trying to stop this person to the time he has to fire the weapon. That sounds to me like you could make an argument about self-defense.
Absolutely you could, but I mean, if your client is telling you all day long, look, I wasn't there, that's my story and I'm sticking to it, I cannot stand up there and make an argument to the jury that, hey, what my client is saying is a lie, and I don't believe them, because then how is the jury ever going to believe anything that we say? So I'm sorry, I think Stephen Washington tied his attorney's hands in this case and said, look, I wasn't there, this is a story we're going with, and if they could not persuade him otherwise, even if it's in his own best interest to go with the self-defense, that's it. That's what you got to go with.
Unbelievable. I'm not complaining about the verdict. I was just wondering what happens behind closed doors with criminal defense attorneys and their clients, criminal defendants. Okay. When we come back, you've heard my reaction, probably too much. You've heard the reaction of our think tank. How about your reaction on social media? We'll talk about that next.
Welcome to Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
It's a busy day here at Court TV.
That is the game changer.
You have to look at everything in this case.
He murdered our daughter.
You take the hose and squeeze it.
Guilty on all counts.
This is true crime all the time.
We continue our gavel-to-gavel coverage, and you're not going to miss a moment of it.
This is what I love to do.
Has your energy level dropped as you've gotten older?
When I was young, into my teens, and when I went into college and played college tennis, I could play all day long and never get tired, ever. As I got older, I started noticing a change in energy.
Do you have less energy than you used to?
Between trying to have a professional life and then take care of my family at the same time, it gets pretty busy.
Scientists have discovered that after you reach age 40, your body produces less vital nitric oxide than it did when you were in your 20s. With less nitric oxide, you have less energy. So how do you get your energy back? Take 1 atom of nitrogen and bond it with 1 atom of oxygen. Boom, you just created nitric oxide, the miracle molecule your body needs to help support your cardiovascular system. Now you can jumpstart your nitric oxide levels with the circulation superfood of Super Beets by Human. The science of Super Beets is based on Nobel Prize award-winning research, which recognizes nitric oxide as an important signaling molecule for cardiovascular health. Super Beets uses the dietary nitrates found in nutrient-rich beets to help your body generate more vital nitric oxide, supporting heart health, blood pressure levels, and energy.
It really has dramatic effects, not only on the athlete, but the average individual is just trying to get through the day. You just feel better, you feel more alert, and you have more energy.
1 teaspoon of Super Beets added to a few ounces of water every day can help replenish what's missing, jumpstarting your energy and supporting healthy blood pressure levels.
It's not the type of energy that you feel great for about 30 minutes and then you take a nosedive. I mean, this is sustained energy that kind of just gets you through the rest of your day.
Beets are emerging as one of nature's most powerful superfoods, but you would have to eat over 90 fresh beets to get the functional benefits found in one canister of Super Beets.
Super Beets is a real food, jam-packed with nutrients that work for you and help you feel better. You're getting this highly concentrated source of the best quality beets, and it tastes good.
Call now to find out how you can get a 30-day supply of Super Beets free with your first order. Call 888-263-7436 now to take advantage of this limited time offer.
What you've just put in your body is actually going to help you sitting at your desk for 8 hours. It's this long-lasting battery life. There's no doubt in my mind that Super Beets has changed my life.
The highly concentrated superfoods found in Super Beets helps unlock the key to better cardiovascular health, supports blood pressure levels, and helps give you more heart-healthy energy.
For a free 30-day supply of Super Beets with your first order, call 888-263-7436 now. Try Super Beets by Human. Call 888-263-7436 now.
All right, folks, your reaction on social media to the verdict in Lansing, Michigan. Stephen Washington found guilty. Not everyone's agreeing with it. Some are, some aren't. Another one of these mixed bags. Let's take a listen, take a look at what folks are saying. Andrea, in my opinion, he should have testified to plead his innocence. I also believe every witness knows who did it and are fearful to admit the truth. Therefore, no one pointed their finger at him directly. What a shame this young man will lose his life. His dad's pain is written all over his face. Ivan deserves time as well. Rest in peace, Isai. And he should have testified to plead his innocence.
That is something that just makes me want to cry, because it is his absolute right to not speak. It is not any way his burden to prove his innocence. It is on the state to prove that he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That would have been my defense. They didn't prove it. He can pull out a gun and he can shoot this man, and if the state can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, it is their duty to acquit him. And so that to me is really upsetting.
Jamie writing tonight, I think the judge was a little inappropriate giving the verdict. He was laughing right before saying guilty, 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 but the defendant never flinched. A very messy trial, but the jury got it right for Isai's family. The judge, we did speak to Chanley about this because she was in the courtroom and actually saw it, and it seems that there was something written on the verdict form by the foreperson who was a bit of a character during the trial. So at that point, and I think we can see it right here, he's reacting to what he's seeing on the page. Unfortunately, it's right before the most dramatic moment in the case, and it's dramatic for the victim's family and for the defendant, obviously, as well. But it's one of those things that happens. Has anyone ever seen anything like that before?
That was awkward.
Yeah.
Very awkward.
You know what's going to be interesting is because this trial was filmed and taped, it can almost become part of the appeal record, because usually what happens in these instances is someone outside of the jury says, I'd like it to be noted that the judge made an audible reaction. We have his face, we have his smirk, and it's going to be part of the appeal. I think this is huge.
Takuri, what did you think about that moment? That was, it kind of caught us off guard a little bit.
I did not expect that. I was surprised, especially because Judge Kennedy, for about as long as I've been alive, was a criminal defense attorney. So I was surprised by it, and I agree that I expect for this to become part of the appeal record.
Nagler writing tonight, this trial has so many appellate issues as you talk about appeals. It's not even funny, from the inappropriateness of the judge to the star witness being coached to all the sweetheart deals. Just goes to show you how unjust our justice system can be. Appellate issues. As a former prosecutor, I always love when people are talking about the appeal. That means I won, right? So let's talk about criminal appeals.
Well, I mean,
likelihood of success in general.
Oh, in general. Well, that really depends on a case-by-case basis, you know. And
Well,
then you've
what are the statistics? What would you say, like 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100?
Well, I'm not just going to make up a bunch of statistics, Vinny. Do you have them written on a piece of paper and you're not telling us?
But I would
Typical
say
prosecutor.
Usually close to slim and none. But sometimes things happen. And what does a criminal defendant get when they win their appeal, folks?
A new trial.
A new trial.
A new trial, so we can convict them once again.
So, right.
Is that right, Takura? You're agreeing with me there?
I disagree. I disagree.
Okay.
Vehemently, because we do trial and appellate work. So often we find ourselves in the position where we are, unfortunately, calling out our brother and sister criminal defense attorneys, but, you know, and I shouldn't say very rarely. Sometimes we do take a case up on appeal where we were the trial attorney, but because you're so invested in it, sometimes it's difficult to pick up the blind spots. But again, it's a case-by-case decision that you make. We will never say we'll never be the appellate attorneys on a case that we took to trial or vice versa. So we've done both. But yeah, you can get a new trial or you can there are a number of things that could happen. But for him, Mr. Washington, a new trial where obviously they've picked up on what it is that perhaps that caused them a little bit of difficulty and where the prosecutor picked up points. So new trial for him would be the best case scenario.
Phil writing tonight, the jury ignored the fact that the state did not prove Washington's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Instead, they focused on the defense going into panic mode once their alibi witness was no longer available. And once the judge allowed the option of self-defense, the jurors figured he must have done it. Or why else would he claim self-defense? I believe the jury got it wrong, and the real killer is celebrating with a bottle of vodka and a pipe filled with weed. You know, the self-defense was not argued, but the instruction was given to the jury. Do you think it had any impact here? Because we couldn't really get that out of juror number 8.
I'm sorry, but it makes a huge difference if you don't argue these things to the jury. I mean, and also when jurors are sitting there listening to the charges and listening to the law that the judge is reading them, it's a snooze fest. I hate to say it, but every single time the judge is going to go over every single aspect of the law that could be involved in the case, and that's typically when you have jurors falling asleep. So if you didn't argue it in closing, don't expect the jurors to take it. Yeah.
Pauletta writing, in my opinion, the fact that the defense didn't bring any witnesses, I believe, hurt Washington's case. I feel there was too much reasonable doubt for a guilty verdict. I'm more inclined to believe Ivan Keener got away with murder. There are no winners here. Isai Barones is gone, and nothing will bring him back, while another young man will sit in prison for a crime he possibly did not commit. All those who participated in the events that led to this tragedy should be charged. There's no justice if the wrong person is convicted, so today there is no justice for Isai. May he rest easy, just my opinion. Defense, no witnesses, nothing.
Now remember, Ivan lawyered up immediately. He went in and talked to investigators, I believe it was the next day, with his attorney. He was prepped. So I think that would have been where I started my closing argument.
How come no one saw him with a gun in his hand, though, of all the witnesses, including the women that he was fighting with earlier that night? None of them said it was anyone who at all resembled Ivan Keener. They all described an African-American man. Some said he had a tattoo under his left eye. So why would the Chapman sisters, who got into the fight with Ivan Keener, lie on the stand?
I don't think they would. I mean, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Ivan's not a great guy. I mean, he's definitely not a knight in shining armor offering up his 2 female
cousins.
But
if he was the one with the gun, the Chapman sisters would have no problem pointing the finger at him, right?
I don't think that the strategy of pointing the finger solely at Ivan Keener was going to be what won it for Mr. Washington on this case. It would be one of those strategies where you're trying to distract the jury a little bit. You're trying to give them somebody else to blame, but it doesn't.
Are you talking about boiling the spaghetti and throwing it? We did that last night. Here's what Allison's writing tonight. I do believe Ivan Keener is beyond guilty. Ivan Keener. He wasn't the defendant in this case. He needs prison time, as if weren't for him. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened, but I do believe Washington was involved in some way. I also think the Kelly cousins need to do some jail time. Again, someone else coming back to Ivan Keener. Accessory after the fact. Takura, what do you think is going to happen to Ivan Keener?
So he hasn't gotten off scot-free, and for the prosecutor to argue in his closing that his own witness lied and to undercut some of the arguments he made doesn't bode well for him. And I mean, he got one of the best criminal defense attorneys in town, so I think Mr. Keener and his family recognize that this is not an ideal position for him to be in. So I'd be surprised if he got off with no charges whatsoever, but he did help the government advance
and he'll be rewarded for that. So I'm sure he will.
Ultimately,
Absolutely. All right, we're a little short on time here. When we come back, we're going to ask the think tank the ultimate question for this case. Was justice served? The answer when we return.
CashNetUSA.com, man. I help when money's tight. If approved, you may get the money you need as soon as tomorrow. Ha! Ha!
Apply now at CashNetUSA.com.
Money's on the way with CashNet USA.
If you're over 50, imagine you could turn back the clock on your stiff, achy joints 10, even 20 years. Imagine you could do this without products that just temporarily hide the symptoms and may have side effects. Imagine no more. Introducing Instaflex Advanced. And right now you can get a complimentary sample of this amazing product just by texting GREEN to 369-369. Instaflex Advanced is different because it targets the root cause of joint soreness and stiffness. It doesn't just cover up symptoms. Instead, it bathes your joints in its unique combination of 5 key natural ingredients found in no other product and backed by 5 clinical studies. Instaflex Advanced feels like turning back the clock on your joints. It's so powerful you can have better knees in just 1 week. Maybe that's why it's the #1 selling joint brand at GNC. But you can only get your complimentary sample by texting GREEN to 369-369. We couldn't make this offer if Instaflex Advanced didn't work. Prove it to yourself by texting GREEN to 369-369.
With the money I've made on Poshmark, I've been able to pay for all our family's vacations.
I could pay for my wedding just on what I've made from Poshmark.
I've made over $10,000 and I was able to buy my new car.
Download the free Poshmark app now.
Best Fiends. Collect JoJo and tons of other cute characters. Solve thousands of fun puzzles. Download Best Fiends for free today. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
If you're behind on your mortgage payments, threatened with foreclosure, denied a loan modification, or have been the victim of a predatory loan, the Stop Foreclosure Group can help. You have rights, and we have options. Call now for a free consultation.
Could someone be stealing your identity or hacking into your phone or laptop? It can actually happen from across the room or from thousands of miles away. Or a company you trust with your personal information could be breached. Your information is in more places than ever. You need more protection than ever. That's why Norton and LifeLock are now part of one company, providing an all-in-one membership for your cyber safety. New Norton 360 with LifeLock gives you identity theft protection, device security, a VPN for online privacy, and more. Cyber criminals keep looking for new ways to steal your personal information. You might not even know it until it's too late.
Someone filed my taxes under my name. $6,000 was sent to some anonymous person, some anonymous bank account.
They got into my bank account and my cell phone. What else do they have?
With threats all around, you need 360-degree protection. New Norton 360 with LifeLock gives you all-in-one protection against today's new threats.
I've got 2 industry leaders coming together to help protect my identity and my devices.
Why not have that added layer of protection so that you can sleep well at night?
Join now and use promo code MyPromo to save 25% off your first year. All Norton 360 with LifeLock memberships include LifeLock Identity Theft Protection backed by our $1 million protection package and U.S.-based restoration specialists who will work to fix problems. Award-winning Norton device security for multiple devices. A VPN for online privacy, securing your connections whether you're on public Wi-Fi or at home. And more.
You never know where cyber threats are lurking these days. Don't wait to become a victim. Here's how to join.
New Norton 360 with LifeLock. Call 1-800-431-2264 or visit lifelock.com/mypromo. Use promo code MyPromo to save 25% off your first year and get a free shredder with annual membership. Call now.
In the blink of an eye, a quiet night turned into utter chaos. This was a senseless crime, to say the least. The defendant got into a car and went over to the apartment building with the sole purpose of fighting. He brought a loaded gun to what was supposed to be a fistfight. He shot a 22-year-old college kid, a kid that was a complete stranger to the defendant. The defendant's actions that night cost the victim his life. And at the end of this trial, the evidence presented to you will prove all of the elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And we will ask you to find the defendant guilty on all counts.
Mr. Washington's innocent. The evidence will not prove that this young man visiting from Mississippi pulled a gun out on a guy he'd never seen before and shot him. A guy who the evidence will indicate did not have a weapon.
Were you able to determine what the cause of Isai Barones' death was?
Yes.
What was the cause of Isai Barones' death?
In my opinion, the cause of his death was a gunshot wound to his chest.
Dr. Markey, how did you as a forensic pathologist classify the manner of Isai Barones' death?
Yeah, for death certification purposes, the manner of death was classified as homicide.
After Miracle walked outside or went outside, you heard her screaming your name?
Yes.
Okay. What happened after you heard her screaming your name?
Me and Isai ran outside.
And when you went out the front door, when you come outside, what do you see?
I saw my sister getting jumped.
The black guy that you described with the hood or wearing all black that was standing off to the side, where was he when you looked up after fighting?
When I looked up, he was standing there, and I just saw like a gun in his hand.
Would you be able to recognize him today?
If I saw him again, yes.
Do you see him anywhere today in the courtroom?
Okay, when I say I would be able to recognize him, it's like if I would have saw him like with a hood on or like the way he was that night, I would have been able to recognize him. No, I don't recognize him right now. No, I don't.
So at some point during this fight, did you hear a gunshot?
Yes, it was when I was on the ground. So I heard like kicker, I heard a gunshot. And I got up and I seen and my sister Tiara too. And then I seen Isai on the ground.
He asked me to come where he was at. He said some girls were trying to fight him.
And what did he want you to do? What was his intent that he expressed to you, please?
To come fight them.
And after you had this phone call with Ivan Keener, what exactly did you do next?
I left my house. I went to my grandfather's house and picked up my sister and Steve.
Now, why did you go to your grandfather's house to pick up your sister and the defendant, Stephen Washington?
Just because I didn't want to go to where my cousin was at by myself.
You know your Fifth Amendment privileges, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Say yes, say it loud. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I've indicated to you that it's my advice as your attorney that you would take the Fifth on any question other than your name and your current address, to take the Fifth on this based upon the fact that you have a pending case in this matter. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
You are testifying under a grant of statutory use immunity, which was granted to you by the Ingham County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. What does statutory use immunity mean to you?
Anything else that comes out about this trial, I can't be charged with.
When you saw Isai Barones and the defendant Stephen Washington in that location, what hand did Isai Barones have the implement that you believe was a knife in?
I think it was the left hand.
In his left hand, and you said that he made a movement towards Stephen Washington. I want you to demonstrate for the jury exactly what type of movement that you observed.
Looked like something like that, a little bit.
Why did you run up to either your cousin Angela or your cousin Jessica at that time?
I was drinking and I was shocked and I don't know, I was kind of freaking out and just wanted to get out.
Why were you shocked and freaking out at that point in time?
Because I saw someone get shot.
This entire incident that we have been parsing out line by line, moment by moment for 2 weeks lasted only about 2 minutes. Ivan Keener, Jessica Kelly, Angela Kelly, and who we allege Stephen Washington arrived on scene, got out of that vehicle, walked up to the building entrance of building number 7. Miracle Chapman came out. Jessica Kelly and Angela Kelly attacked her. Aleka Chapman came out. The fight continued with Aleka Chapman. Isai Barones came out of the house. Isai Barones made it from in front of that residence to the west where he was found dead. He was shot, killed. Tierra Wyckoff came out of the house. An African-American male approached her, hit her in the face with a weapon, All 4 people fled in their vehicle, then Tierra Wyckoff called the police. That happened in 2 minutes. This is a frenetic, purposeful scene.
Mr. Carino's logic is fantasy and it's baloney. Firstly, he brings a bunch of witnesses in here, 17 witnesses. And only Ivan, the admitted liar, Keener, says that Mr. Washington shot anybody. Only Ivan, the liar, Keener. That's reasonable doubt. This young man died. He died at the hands of somebody who shot him. And he deserves justice. But justice is not putting the wrong person away.
In fact, the evidence in this case shows absolutely nothing about a big frame-up coordinated by these people, and the defendant no longer even argues that it is the classic frame-up because of the evidence that has actually been presented in this case. The defense has been a moving target the entire time, ladies and gentlemen, and now the defense is, well, no longer a frame-up, no longer the cheese that stands alone, but it must be Ivan Keener who committed this act. And in doing so, the defense ignores all of the actual evidence in the case.
All right, be seated. Okay, I've been advised the jury has reached a verdict. Who's the foreperson? Juror number 3, would you hand the verdict to the bailiff for me, please? Okay, the verdict form has been signed by juror number 3, dated today's date. The jury, in regards to count 1, finds the defendant guilty. In regards to count 2, carrying concealed weapon, guilty. And in regards to count 3, felony firearm, guilty.
Stephen Washington convicted today in Lansing, Michigan, but the ultimate question here at this point tonight is, was justice served? Let's bring back in our think tank, and we'll begin in Lansing, Michigan with Takura Kiam-Fakudza. Was justice served?
It was not, Vinnie. So the prosecutor is the first attorney who has their hands on the file, and they're the ones who decide what charges are issued. We, the criminal defense attorneys, the constitutional warriors, put their case to the test, and the judge is the referee. But the most powerful people in that courtroom are the jurors. That's why I have so much faith in them. Here, while I'm not surprised by the verdict, I don't think the government's case was sufficient enough to justify this verdict. So I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised by the verdict. But no, justice was not done.
Holly Waltman, was justice served today?
Not at all. This trial was riddled with errors, from the judge change in the beginning, the deputy mentioning that the defendant was in custody, the laughter that the judge had before the verdict, and the first-degree murder charge being dropped after the state's presentation of the case. I think that's disgusting. If you didn't have first-degree murder, don't indict it that way. No, it wasn't served today.
Jasmine Barber, was justice served today?
I'm going yes on this one, Vinnie. I think the circumstantial evidence all points to Mr. Washington. I think the jury saw it pretty clearly, but with two caveats. I want to see what happens on the sentencing in this case. I don't believe this was an intent to kill type murder. This is not something I believe Mr. Washington needs to serve the rest of his life in prison over. This was a heated argument. It happened in less than 2 minutes. So I'd like to see what happens with his sentence, and I'd like to see what happens to Keener. So I reserve total justice until I see those two things happen.
Ashley McMahon, was justice served today in Lansing, Michigan?
I'm going with yes and no. I think yes, because I do believe that Washington shot the victim in this case. However, I don't think justice will actually be served until Ivan Keener has to answer for starting this ridiculous fight that never needed to happen in the first place. Absolute nonsense.
And that's a great point, and what a great job by everyone tonight.